I were king, I would redress an abuse which cuts back, as it were, one half of humankind. I would have women participate in all human rights, especially those of the mind. Those are the words of philosopher Émile du Châtelet. For those of you who don't know, Émile du Châtelet, born Gabriel Émile de Tonlier de Bouteille-la-Marquise du Châtelet, was famously known for being Voltaire's mistress. Though it is not documented, her thoughts and ideas were heavily implemented in the French Enlightenment, and they were unfortunately given credit to Voltaire and not Émile. Growing up and learning about the French Enlightenment, Voltaire and all of his workings would have been the main topic of discussion, and it has been that way for decades now. As time continues on, credit should be given where it's due, and that's where Émile should come in. Today, I will be discussing with her background, some of her accomplishments, the importance of her work, and how it has affected the philosophers and women's rights of yesterday and even today. Born in Paris in the year of 1706, Émile grew up interested in the fields of math and science. At a young age, she was already pondering these subjects, and she was even fighting for the right for women to study these problems. Unfortunately, Émile was rejected by scholarly institutions to seek a higher education in academic schools because she was a woman. Being that Émile grew up wealthy since her father was a part of the royal court, she instead hired tutors to teach her mathematics, science, and even philosophy. Many famous academic scholars had tutored her and courted her plenty of times. Now that Émile was an educated individual, she began to do her own research and work, specifically in physics. This is where Voltaire had stepped in. A friendship and affair that had begun in 1734, they had begun doing work together on mathematics. Voltaire was the man who had given Émile the name du Châtelet. During this time, Châtelet wrote a French translation of Newton's laws of physics and began to test theories with Voltaire that Sir Isaac Newton himself had written about. With Émile's assistance, Voltaire had published Elements de philosophie de Newton in 1738. A former tutor of Émile's, Francesco Algarotti, published a book inspired by Émile's work, Newtonism for the Ladies. This had increased a positive reputation on Émile and her research in mathematics and Newton's theory. Here is a visual aid of some of the work that Émile had been involved in, of the different types of planes of the cosmos. This led to Émile's own work being published. After testing many theories and laws herself, du Châtelet had anonymously published Institutions de Physique in Paris. It discussed the basic principles of knowledge to the nature of space and time and the understanding of the natural phenomena associated with gravity, the planetary orbits, the pendulum, and free fall. She was not credited with her own work until the second edition of her first book. By 1743, her book was being translated in several different languages and had become one of Europe's top best minds. In 1746, du Châtelet is elected to the Bologna Academy of Sciences. By this time, her institution book was being taught to fellow students at the academy. In 1749, Émile had passed away from a pulmonary embolism due to childbirth complications in her early 40s. Due to Châtelet's work on Newton's laws were being credited by major philosophers of the Enlightenment. Posthumous publications of du Châtelet's Discours sur le bonheur, which means Discourse on Happiness. This publication happens to be her most famous, as it has appeared in numerous translations and in many editions over the next 100 years. Even though Émile's lifespan had been short, her impact had indeed lasted a lifetime. There are novels, articles, and even plays such as Legacy of Light written about her. This had been giving her some credit, but many history books had indeed forgotten who she is. She has inspired many young women and current scientists to pursue the STEM field. Her work on math, science, and even different languages is something that should be documented and should continue to be documented. Her work has been credited to many different men philosophers, which has caused her name to be forgotten through the years.